What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. Today, we got a good one for you guys. In today's video, we're going to be going over the tight ends that you should have drafted. And for those of you out there who may not have had their fantasy draft list, let this be a list of fantasy tight ends that you should keep on your radar. Before we do get into the video though, just want to give a big shout out to you guys that watch, view, and subscribe to our channel. Each day we're inching closer and closer to our goal of hitting 100,000 subscribers before the start of the NFL season, and we of course have you guys to thank for it. If you guys do enjoy these videos though, make sure you're hitting that like button, and if you're new to the channel, maybe you haven't yet subscribed, consider taking today as an opportunity to do so. And for those of you guys out there who may not have had your drafts yet, if you want to make sure that you crush it, consider signing up for our draft package. Not only will you gain access to our tier-based rankings, our sleepers, our targets, our busts, we also have risk ratings, we have player projections, we have video player breakdowns on the top 150 players. If that's not enough, you'll also gain access to our private Discord community group, which will be a great benefit all season long. So if that's something that interests you, the link for that is in the description box below. With that being said though, it's time to go over to our stat of the day. Yesterday's stat of the day was which team led the league in fourth quarter points per game. The correct answer was actually the Las Vegas Raiders. Congratulations to Trip Olgum, the first to get this right on YouTube, and as for Twitter, at ColinGrace15. Once again, congratulations to both of you. But as for today's stat of the day, who is the only running back age 27 or older to have at least 130 rushing yards in a single game last season? If you know who that is, leave your answer in the comment section down below. We'll be happy to let you know who wins in tomorrow's video. Alright guys, without further ado, let's hop right into this list of tight ends that you should have drafted. We're going to begin with one of my favorite tight ends in the entire draft. That's going to be Logan Thomas of the Washington football team. He's coming off of a very successful season last year. He was somebody that could have been found on waivers. And in that season, he had 110 targets through 16 games, a healthy season, converting that 110 targets into 72 receptions, 670 receiving yards to go along with 6 receiving touchdowns. Now, those numbers may not just jump off the page at you, but at the tight end position, that was actually good for a fantasy finish of 3 overall if we're talking PPR leagues. But even if you're talking in standard, he was still a top 7 tight end. No matter which scoring format you were looking in, Logan Thomas was dominant, especially for a player like I mentioned you could find off the waivers. And with him being a player found on waivers, I think that's a bit why he's being disrespected when it comes to fantasy drafts. And what I mean by that is that his ADP is pretty low for a player that produced like he did the season before. Looking at that ADP specifically, the worst value you can get him on when we're talking platform is FFPC, where he's coming in 69th overall. But where most people play, let's talk ESPN, Yahoo, and Sleeper. ESPN 82nd overall, Yahoo 81st overall, and Sleeper coming off the board 106th overall. That means for value at worst, he's coming in as a 7th round pick on those 3 platforms, and at best, if you're not even getting him at a value, if you draft him on Sleeper, this is a player you can get with your 9th round pick if he falls. We're talking 10th round. That's an incredible value, and we have to ask ourselves, why is he falling so far in drafts? And clearly, the strategy for most people is to get one of those big top 3 tight ends, the Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, George Kittle. But think about it, in a 12-person league, we only have 3 of those elite guys. That means the rest of us, the 9 out of 12 of us, are going to have to look for other options, and hopefully ones that can compete with those guys. Very few tight ends do, just because they don't get that much volume. But Logan Thomas proved to us last season, on the back of 110 total targets, that he does have within his range of outcomes a season like those players, albeit everything last season did work out in his favor. In order for him to do that, the Washington football team desperately needed weapons in the passing game. They only had Terry McLaurin. They didn't have Curtis Samuel, who they did sign in free agency this year. Antonio Gibson, he was banged up throughout the season, so I believe a healthy Antonio Gibson, yes, they will rely on him more, but anything that they're going to be losing from desperation having to get Logan Thomas involved, they're still going to be gaining when it comes to offensive efficiency. I strongly do believe that the Washington football team's offense is going to be taking a step forward. Logan Thomas, still a big part of that. Just because Curtis Samuel's joining doesn't mean Logan Thomas is going to completely fall off a cliff. Yes, some of the targets that last season were going to Logan Thomas could go to other weapons in this offense, and Ryan Fitzpatrick has historically been known as a quarterback that does favor targeting the wide receiver position, another factor that could possibly be contributing to the lower ADP of that of Logan Thomas. But for those of you out there that think he is a one-year wonder, I strongly feel that is a mistake. Yes, he may not be the focal point of the offense like at times he was in the passing game last season, but he's an incredible athlete. He has a big body. He stands 6'6", 248 pounds. He's a mismatch for opposing defenses, no matter which way you look at it. He runs a 4.61, which is in the 89th percentile. Even better if you look at his height adjusted speed score, that's in the 92nd percentile. But he's not just fast, he's agile, coming in with an 86th percentile agility score. He can be a superior weapon in the red zone and against opposing defenders. We're talking a player with a 95th percentile catch radius as well. So no matter which way you look at it, he does have physical advantages over his opponents. So as long as the volume and catchable targets are going his direction, Logan Thomas should be able to succeed. Having Ryan Fitzpatrick as the quarterback should not be looked at as a downgrade, which a lot of people are looking at it as. Logan Thomas's catchable target percentage is bound to increase, going from Alex Smith and Taylor Heineke and Dwayne Haskins, just a mess at quarterback that they had last season, no consistency. They're moving over to Ryan Fitzpatrick, who, albeit he is a journeyman and one that has historically favored wide receivers, at least we know when targets are going the direction of Logan Thomas, they're going to be much more accurate. They're going to be on target. He's not going to need 110 targets in order to produce the same amount of fantasy points as he did a season ago. If he does get 110 targets, expect an easy top 3 finish. But even if he doesn't, let's say he even drops down to 80 or 90 receptions, this is a player that can still easily smash his ADP. For that reason, I think he is not only a great value in drafts, but somebody you guys should have drafted. If you haven't drafted yet, keep him on your radar and make him one of those top targets if you miss out on those big 3 elite tight ends. All right, guys, we're moving into the next player, and just as much as I like Logan Thomas in drafts, I definitely like this player. I would say second most, or at least tied with him, and it's Tyler Higbee of the LA Rams. We've been very vocal throughout this entire offseason about wanting to get pieces of this LA Rams offense onto our fantasy squads, and Tyler Higbee being one of the cheaper options to be able to make that a reality, it means he is somebody that I'm targeting in a lot of my leagues. If I'm not getting a Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp or a combination of one of the two, I'm looking out for Higbee at the later stages of the draft, and even if I get one of those wide receivers on my team, I'm not eliminating Tyler Higbee from my players to target list. And that right there answers a question that some of you may have, whether we should be stacking these players on the LA Rams offense. If I drafted Robert Woods, can I draft Tyler Higbee later? The short answer, yes. Now, I mean, if we're stacking Matthew Stafford, Tyler Higbee, and a player like Robert Woods, I think that is probably pushing it. One injury to Matthew Stafford would completely dismantle your fantasy team, but it's still a team that I feel comfortable stacking because it's going to be one of the better offenses. In those big games where Matthew Stafford throws for 4 touchdowns, you're likely going to get 2, possibly more of those, and this offense is going to be putting up enough points to support multiple fantasy relevant players. As for Tyler Higbee himself, I know last season was somewhat of a disappointing season if we're talking fantasy. Tyler Higbee finished as the tight end 17 last year in PPR leagues on the back of 60 targets, 44 receptions, to go along with 5 receiving touchdowns. Now those numbers aren't completely terrible, but they're much worse than what anyone drafting him was expecting. We do have to keep in mind that this was on a team that was really struggling offensively last year. Jared Goff and the LA Rams put up one of their most inconsistent seasons offensively that we had seen under Sean McVay. Heading into this year, though, they knew they had to make a change. First things first, get rid of Jared Goff. Out he went. In comes Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford is reported to be doing everything that Sean McVay ever dreamed he would by signing him and more. So all the reports that we've had so far have been nothing but positive. Some of you out there may be apprehensive in targeting Tyler Higbee because it could be the fool me once, shame on you situation, fool me twice, shame on me situation. Because yes, Tyler Higbee was a player touted last season. He didn't perform. Those that drafted Tyler Higbee are going to have a hard time trying to take a second stab into that situation, but it's much different this year. Even looking back at how he produced, though, diving a bit more into the analytics of last year and how Tyler Higbee produced, to be frank, he was much better than meets the eye. For starters, Tyler Higbee finished last season playing on the 12th most snaps out of any tight end. That's not a massive opportunity rating. That number we fully expect to increase. Why exactly do we believe that? Well, because Gerald Everett is now gone. Gerald Everett is a tight end that was taking up snaps and playing alongside with Tyler Higbee. Many of the snaps and plays that Tyler Higbee will gain this year were formerly going to be going to Gerald Everett, but now, with him not being on the team and now being a Seattle Seahawk, the opportunities for Tyler Higbee are bound to increase, and like I said last season, he ranked 12th in this area. With the struggles that the LA Rams had offensively last season, a lot of the advanced metrics didn't look good for many players on that offense. Tyler Higbee, though, was one of the lone bright spots when connecting with Jared Goff. Tyler Higbee's yards per reception ranked 11th. His yards per target even better, coming in at 7th. He had a target premium percentage coming in with the 3rd best in the entire league at that position. And Sean McVay, when he's drawing up plays for the tight end, loves to get the tight end in positions where they can score, also positions where they're easily able to be targeted. The catchable target percentage for any other player on the LA Rams was not as good as in previous seasons, but that was the complete opposite for players like Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett. Higbee himself finishing 8th in target accuracy, 7th in catchable target rate, despite ranking 23rd in average cushion and 13th in separation. Opposing defenses, they were prepared to defend him, but there was nothing they could do. The players were drawn up too well. Couple that with a physical mismatch of a player 6'6", 250 pounds, and what you have is a player that's going to be put in a position to succeed quite frequently. Currently, Tyler Higbee is coming off of the board as the TE8. That's the same spot that we have him ranked. Keep in mind, though, that on both Sleeper and ESPN, you can get him at an incredible value. And I truly mean that. If any of you guys are considering drafting Tyler Higbee, please listen up for one moment. If you're on ESPN, if you're on Sleeper, you're going to get him at a steal. ESPN, he's coming off the board 120th overall. That's insane. That means you can get your entire starting lineup, a few bench players, and still come back to Tyler Higbee and get him as your starting tight end. In Sleeper leagues, though, he's still a good value, coming in 111th overall. In Yahoo, though, I would say the third most popular type of platform, he really isn't coming in at a great value, and I'm not sure I can really recommend targeting him coming off the board 78th overall. It's actually the worst value out of all of the platforms, so if you're somebody drafting on Yahoo, maybe opt for one of the other players on this list, which we will get into right now. The third player, who actually out of all is coming in at the greatest value across all platforms. So if you do miss out on the other players on this list or the big 3 elite tight ends, maybe this is a guy that you can consider. I wouldn't recommend drafting him as your lone tight end. I would still want to keep drafting other players at this position, maybe get 2 options, like maybe a Jonnu Smith later, just so hopefully one could work out, because there is plenty of risk with this player. It's Irv Smith of the Minnesota Vikings. Now when it comes to Irv Smith, this is still a developmental product, a player yet to have broken out, but he's heading into his 3rd season. His 2 previous seasons, very similar from a statistical standpoint, playing in 13 and 14 games alike, receiving 47 and 43 targets alike, and coming down with 30 and 36 receptions alike. Looking at his most recent season, though, that was the 30 reception season, finishing the season, though, with 365 receiving yards, a rate of 12.2 yards per reception. Phenomenal at the tight end position. You don't need me to tell you that, though. But what was most impressive was that on those 30 receptions, 1 out of 6 of those, he came down with a touchdown. That's right, he had 5 total touchdowns on a mere 30 receptions. Very phenomenal numbers, and something we can definitely see continue as we head into 2021. When looking for tight end targets, though, as per usual, we are looking for those physical freak athletes. Irv Smith, no different. He may be lacking a bit on the height, being a converted wide receiver, but he's still 6'2", 242 pounds, and looking at his 40-yard dash time, he still is in the 86th percentile. Height adjusted, though, since he is smaller, his height adjusted speed score, that's only in the 72nd percentile, but we're still talking a player who's in the 72nd percentile as a disappointing statistic. That's exactly how crazy things get when we're talking Irv Smith, and with him being an ascending player on an ascending offense, there is a lot to love about his 2021 season. The Minnesota Vikings have been a top 12 scoring offense for each of the past 2 years, and with Dalvin Cook being healthy recently, Justin Jefferson, a rookie last season, he's really coming into his own and heading into his 2nd season. There is a lot to love about him. They still have Adam Thielen, a player who is probably trending downward if we're being quite frank, but even having him on the offense is a massive boost to the other weapons as well as the entire offense. Those of you relying on him for fantasy, yeah, you may not get the numbers you did in previous seasons, but overall he's still going to be involved. Guessing which games he's going to produce, a bit more hard to predict, but at the end of the season, I think a lot of people will be surprised with the numbers that he did end up putting up. This incredible cast of supporting characters is only going to benefit and help the development of Irv Smith, who in his first 2 seasons has shown a lot of promise, and with Kyle Rudolph no longer on the team to take away snaps from him, is going to be stepping into a major role for this offense. Kyle Rudolph, he is now a New York Giant. While Kyle Rudolph did appear to be phased out for the most part in the past 2 seasons, remember these were the 2 seasons that Irv Smith was on the roster. Clearly, Irv Smith was going to be looked at as the future in the passing game. Kyle Rudolph was getting phased out, so he really didn't have that many targets in the past 2 seasons, peaking at 48. But the seasons before that, 82, 81. Kirk Cousins is no stranger to targeting the tight end position. We cannot forget, I know it was a long time ago, but back in Washington, he supported a top 5 season from Jordan Reed on several occasions. Basically, anytime Jordan Reed was in the offense, Kirk Cousins was targeting him and targeting him often. Now, I will say there is one thing that's potentially going to be holding back Irv Smith from reaching his ceiling, and that is definitely going to be Tyler Conklin, the other tight end playing behind him. Now, up until this point, we do know that Tyler Conklin will be involved, but to what extent is unknown. This is one of the reasons why I said if you're drafting Irv Smith, you likely should also draft a second option, or at least keep the options on the waiver wire in your mind. So if there is a good tight end that's producing, that's been on the waiver wire, maybe you roster him and hope it develops into something more. Irv Smith, though, a phenomenal target and definitely somebody I feel is a tight end you should have drafted. All right, guys, we're moving into the final tight end. This is a tight end that I really don't need to make that strong of a case for, because I believe most of you guys do agree with this analysis. It's Robert Tonyan of the Green Bay Packers. This is another great tight end option that you are going to be getting as a value on draft day. Taking a look at ESPN, Yahoo, as well as sleeper leagues, but looking at ESPN, this is a player you can get outside the top 100, quite a bit outside the top 100. We're talking 119th overall. As for sleeper, virtually the same, coming in 114th overall, but like I had mentioned, on Yahoo, it is going to be a bit pricey. Currently, he's coming off the board 77th overall, but this is a trend you're seeing with all tight ends on Yahoo. If you're drafting on that platform, you got to know heading into the draft that you're going to have to pay up for that position. As for Robert Tonyan himself, he's coming off of a phenomenal season where he finished 4th in PPR leagues, 3rd in standard. And if we're looking for tight ends, like you notice with every one of these players on this list, we're looking for players that could compete and crack that top 5. So if you didn't draft one of those elite tight ends, you're at least getting a player that can match that production, or at least get pretty darn close to it. Most of the players have already proven to be able to produce like that in previous seasons, and some of them do have the advanced metrics and the upside to potentially make it happen. Robert Tonyan, a player that has already done that last season, who, despite coming in with the same quarterback and same cast of weapons offensively, is not getting the respect he deserves after putting up such a stellar season the season before. In that season, he only had 59 targets, converting that into 52 receptions, so a phenomenal catch rate, 586 receiving yards to go along with 11 touchdowns. Now, a lot of people are a bit apprehensive in targeting a tight end that produced on such a small target market share, or such a small amount of targets. Understandably, 59 total targets, if you were to tell me to begin the season, was going to be the amount of targets that the tight end finishing as the TE3, TE4 was going to receive, I would have probably called you crazy. It's hard to imagine that somebody producing on that small of a target share was able to put up such respectable numbers. And if this tight end was on any other offense besides Green Bay, I'd probably question it quite a bit more. But Aaron Rodgers, he is returning. We don't have to worry about it being another quarterback. Aaron Jones, he's returning as well, so that offensive efficiency, them being in scoring range frequently, it's not going to all have to be on the back of Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Jones can definitely pick up his part. And as for this passing offense, the receivers on this team, Devontae Adams, yes, they brought him back, of course, but there's really no other true wide receivers behind him to potentially usurp Robert Tonyan in this offense after Robert Tonyan truly made a name for himself last season. Each and every day, we get a new update from training camp out of Green Bay stating that Robert Tonyan made a phenomenal play in the end zone or in the red zone, and it just comes down to the fact that they didn't bring in other weapons. Aaron Rodgers is still going to be one of the most efficient quarterbacks in that area of the field. Robert Tonyan, being a player who walked himself into the right position, who has produced when his number was called, he's only going to gain more opportunities from it. He literally caught 52 of 59 targets. Could he have performed better? I really don't think so. And with him doing his part on his end, means that more opportunities are likely going to see their way to him. If they didn't add more weapons to take away his target market share, I could possibly even see that increase. So with him coming off the board outside the top 100 on many of the platforms that we're drafting on, you do have to wonder why people are avoiding him. I strongly believe he is going to be a tight end that people regret not drafting. So if you haven't had your draft yet and you're tight end needy, keep Robert Tonyan, Tyler Higbee, Logan Thomas, and Irv Smith on your radar, because I strongly believe these are 4 tight ends that were misvalued on draft day. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. Who are some tight ends that you guys think people should have drafted? Let us know in the comment section down below. But if you enjoyed, how about hitting that like button? If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We thank you all for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.